Welcome to the Camp Owners Podcast. On today's show, we have some very special guests. Kelly and I invite our spouses to talk all things camp, the unique dynamic of being business partners and life partners, and what the summer looked like for us this past year. Stay tuned.
Welcome to the Camp Owners Podcast, a space for camp owners to talk about the unique aspects of camp ownership and get inspired by each other. We are going to sit down with camp industry experts, leaders, and fellow camp owners to hear how the camp dream transpired for them, learn from each other, and discuss some of the biggest issues in the private camp industry. Welcome. I am Kelly Shuna, co-owner and director of Hidden Pines Ranch Day Camp, located in Stillwater, Minnesota.
Hi, everybody. I'm Howie Grossinger, and I am the co-owner of Camp Robin Hood, a day camp in the suburbs of Toronto. If you're looking to find and subscribe to the Camp Owners Podcast, you can either find us online at gocamp.pro/ownerspod or by searching for us in your favorite podcast app. Finally, if you're listening to this and think it would be useful for other camp owners or aspiring camp owners in your circle, please feel free to send them a note to listen. Kelly, great to see you. And before we get things started, got to give a big shout out to our sponsor, one of our sponsors for our podcast, and that's Camptivities. Imagine, everybody, you quickly search Google for a camp activity scheduler, and you come across Camptivities, an activity scheduler for camps by camp people. As you click the link, you're already thinking, this would never work for my camp, but you begin to explore the many ways that Camptivities can help you. Group scheduling, camper scheduling, batch scheduling, lots of cabin groups on a day or a week schedule. This might actually work for us and save us a ton of time, will be what you're saying to yourself once you check out Camptivities. Think about your organizational continuity and stop relying on one person to make your summer schedules. Our camp has been using Camptivities for almost 5 years now and couldn't be happier. So grateful to Ryan and his team for being our show sponsors. And I know their team at Camptivities would love to show you what we all think is the next big thing in camp. Visit camptivities.com to set up a time to chat. Well, we have a really, really awesome show today, Kelly. I know this took a lot of arm twisting potentially, I'm not sure, but when our guests hear about this topic, I'd like to think they'll be really intrigued about the things we're going to discuss. So here we are, as you know, Kelly, it's our third season, and we are now officially taking the plunge into having our spouses and business partners join us for this episode. Not sure if this will morph into couples therapy, but we know so many of our colleagues share their lives personally and professionally with each other, and some out there may actually be considering it. We hope the four of us can provide some insight into what I know for all of us is an incredibly rewarding experience, but fully aware that this may not be for everyone. I'm really excited to introduce my partner in life and my business partner, Sari, to the show. Hi, Sari.
Good morning, everyone.
Great to have you.
Thanks for inviting us on.
Sorry, Sari, I cut you off. And I am introducing my husband, Peter, who does camp with me, but also does a different job along the side. He has a side job, a little side gig. It's more than a side gig, but Howie, I had the exact same thought. I was thinking, oh, this is kind of going to be like couples therapy. I'm just going to listen to Peter talk and reflect. This will be lovely.
Yeah, no, it's going to be lots of fun. But you know, I know, you know, over the years we've gotten to know each other. We've shared our journey in camp ownership and the role that our partnerships with our spouses have played in what we're experiencing in a typical year and through the entire pandemic. And we just thought that, you know, given some of the topics that we've had in the past, that, you know, I think we'd like to think that our listeners would appreciate some insight in some of the things we've experienced together as couples, running a business and running family and having children grow up at various stages, which I know we're at different stages. So yeah, I look forward to exploring all of these things. I thought, Kelly, that maybe, we typically get our guests to give a bit of a background into sort of their journey in camp, and maybe we can ask, Peter and Sari to do the same. Peter, maybe you want to give us, just a little bit of insight into your journey into the industry up till now.
All right. Well, camp for me, we bought the camp that I went to as a child. So that was something from a young age that I sort of joked about with people that I wanted to buy camp. So I started here as a camper, and then I loved it. Hated the 2 summers, I think, that I was stuck at home being the responsible oldest child in summers. And I think I picked strawberries one summer, and that was not very fun, at least compared to being at camp. So when I came back and convinced the owner to be a junior counselor, worked here for 4 summers, some of the best 4 summers of my life. And then Kelly and I met each other in college. We both enjoyed camping. She worked at a camp in northern Minnesota and called me when I was at home that summer and said, "Hey, we need some guys up here." I quit my job and went to another camp just to sit in a cabin and sleep with kids. So that was fantastic. And then we started exploring our camp journey here as we moved closer to Stillwater and tried to make this a reality. And we've already gone through 6 summers, which is kind of crazy. So that's at least the beginning of my camp journey.
Yeah.
You left out the part about how you told the owner as a 8-year-old boy that you were going to own this camp someday, which I think I love that part. And then I love that there wasn't even a junior counselor position, that you basically went to Claire and was like, "You should hire me. I'm not old enough, but you should hire me." So those are how those things happen, right? Like, oh, okay, maybe we'll make a junior counselor position. So I think that's pretty brazen of you, but I love it. It was like you knew back then and you just threw it out in the universe, and here we go. Here we are.
Yeah, I see that in a few of my children now. I never lacked confidence, even if it was well misplaced, but I never lacked it. So
yes, I can identify with that.
But here it is. Here it is. All right, Sari, tell us about your story.
So my journey started, I guess my parents met in university. My mom was a nurse and my dad was a competitive swimmer, and he was in phys ed. And he decided that he wanted to train, and he was training right through the summers, but he trained at a facility that actually hosted a camp as well. And so he was asked to be the head of swim there because he was always training in the morning and the evenings. And then my mom was the camp nurse as she was going through nursing school. And then they moved the site up to Markham, where it is now, just before I was born. And so I literally grew up at Robin Hood at our day camp. My sister and I, and loved day camp from the get-go, but my parents always said it was important to also experience other types of camps too. So we did go to our friend's overnight camp and grew up there for a while, but realized that I really was a day camper at heart. So I ended back at Robin Hood and worked my way through camp, started as like the counselor, junior counselor, swim instructor. My dad was always like, you got to try out all these different areas. But my dream was always to one day join him as one of the directors of camp. Howie went to a different day camp, but we won't hold that against him. And and then when we got married, I had already been working at the day camp, but also my dad always said, you have to have another career as well. So I went through as an occupational therapist and missed one summer at Robin Hood, which was the hardest summer after being CIT coordinator, and then haven't left Robin Hood since, and brought Howie on board with me. And then we kind of expanded our journey to our overnight camps as well. That's kind of my journey. Did I leave out anything, Hal?
No, it's just that Sari and I started dating in high school. So we have, a relationship that, spanned through our adolescence. And after about 2 years, I loved camp. So I got I got enough nerve to actually apply for a job at her dad's camp, like 2 years into our relationship, and was kind of nervous about the whole thing, but slowly, was able to make a positive impression, not only on his daughter, but on my contribution to camp, I think. And so he was really kind to give me some extra responsibilities every year. And it's kind of funny. The side joke about it all was the person who thought I would be a professional camp director very early wasn't necessarily Sari's parents. It was the site manager at Camp Robin Hood who I worked for post university, like in the months leading up to camp. And we all got nicknames. And he's passed on since. His name was Wes Cooper, and he gave me the nickname Future Boy when I was 19 years old. And it was this kind of funny thing that this running joke about he knew well before Sari's dad did that, this might be for him kind of thing. So it was kind of this running joke. And yes, it's been a great journey. As many listeners may remember, I was a high school teacher for 10 years before I took the plunge into full-time camp. And Sari and I have been doing it for 20 years full time. And there you have it. And it's been awesome.
Wow. Well, that leads us into, I think, first thing that we wanted to talk about was have each of us describe what that partnership looks like from kind of the big picture to day to day, because we have very different day to day. So do the two of you want to talk about what that looks like now as far as your roles and what that partnership looks like between the two of you?
Yeah, for sure. Sari, do you want to give a 30,000 feet view of what we do together? Or maybe, I don't know.
People always look at us and go, really? Like, you're married, you work together, you live together, you raise your kids together, and your parents are involved still. Like, how do you do it all? But we definitely find our ways to work together, but also explore our interests so that we're able to do a lot of volunteer work within the camp industry too. So I think it kind of gives us our own, and Howie with the podcast, with you, Kelly, like it gives us our own ways to be able to enjoy our camp experience. But we definitely do this full time together. Obviously the off season looks a little different than when we're in camp season, and having to work together that way. But we do, as you can see, you guys are sitting together in a room that, well, some may not be able to see, and we are in two separate rooms. So we do a lot of stuff together, but we also make sure that we've got some nice boundaries in the way that we run our camp too, which I think is really important to make it all work.
Yeah, and I think specifically, Sari's strength has always been her skill at problem solving, in the experience of kids that come to camp, but also in what I believe is something she's very humble about, is because she's, as I know we all do in the industry, is you become somewhat of a parent coach too, right? So you're managing, and Sari in our operation really manages the client experience, onboarding parents, building relationship with parents, the camper experience, and obviously using her skills as a trained occupational therapist. Inclusion is a big part of what we do at Robin Hood. So Sari's, main focus is really her connections to campers and families, in terms of big picture. And mine has been sort of consistent with I guess my personality, and that is, I'm very much involved in program, and Kelly, I think some of the reasons we connect is we like to get into daily program with kids, and we don't want to give that part up. So I do a lot of schmoozing with campers and their families, and love to pick my spots with the camper daily experience. But I also have being just, and I don't say this just, but as a physical educator, that was my training. So over the last 20 years, I've been proud of the fact that I've become more in tune with the business side of camp. Working with staff has been a big part of what I do. So we've been able to find our silos, but I think, as probably with you, big camp decisions, big investments in the program. We do so much collaboratively, but have our own buckets that we call our own, which works really well.
Was it hard to determine what your roles would be, or when you took over from Sari's parents, or were you already so entrenched in what your roles were that it wasn't hard to say, okay, you're going to do this and I'm going to do this?
I think it
Well,
was the latter. I
yeah.
personally think it was the latter. Like, I think Howie definitely being a section head and shining there and the programming, and that's naturally where he gravitates to, which is awesome. And I'm more a little bit more behind the scenes, and so that fit perfectly. So that's how I felt.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I also have to give credit, and we won't get into this, but depending on anyone's situation in in either family succession in camping, or, a couple like yourselves that buy, a camp and have to make some certain decisions on how you're going to, divide and conquer. I give credit to Sari's dad, I think, who, as part of our the mentorship he gave us and sort of the vision of knowing our strengths, was able to be a real, guide in that process, which allowed, when the day came where we actually were purchasing camp and making it our own, things had really settled into those roles, because he played such a role in shaping and knowing our strengths as people, and giving us sort of that piece. So, I know there are different people in different situations in the camp world, but we were lucky enough to have someone, and it wasn't sort of kind of this master plan kind of thing. Like, his personality was just the way it just sort of organically morphed into that. So that's sort of how it came to be.
That's cool.
What about you guys?
Shout out to Sari's father, by the way, your
Yeah.
father-in-law. That's awesome. I don't know, Peter, you want to describe our situation?
I mean, I think from a like day-to-day camp operation standpoint, I definitely am behind the scenes. I have another job, so that's probably one of the biggest portions for that. I kind of see myself as filling in the holes that happen from one day to the next, whether that's, actually programming stuff that probably doesn't happen as much as it is a guide and I guess you could even say a mentor a little bit on problem solver. That's probably the biggest thing, is solving problems when there's behind the scenes problems that we need to fix. That's usually when I get pulled in, and then all of the wonderful grounds and maintenance things that happen around here that continue year round. So I'm the CEO of another company, a family owned company between my father, brother and sister and myself. So that takes a considerable amount of my time, but the pandemic's actually been, for me personally, pretty great, because my travel's gone from 30 or 40% of the time to almost nothing. So that gives me a lot more flexibility to be around camp as much as I want to be. And that's more just beginning of the camp season. I was here a lot this year, especially with new staff, just pitching in and looking like I fit in. And as things were running a little bit more smoothly, or at least felt like they were, then I, kind of snuck back behind the scenes again. So I'm everywhere and nowhere.
Yeah. I would say he has been more, like you said, more involved during the pandemic than ever. I mean, in the beginning, obviously, and previous to this summer, I felt like it was, the day-to-day, the, maintenance, all that kind of stuff. My therapist and legal counsel, and but especially our leadership team, we pulled in Peter a lot for big decisions that we had to make as a couple really big decisions in the past, just like you did. But then also we'll be like, well, what would Peter do? Okay, what do we think Peter would say? Okay, let's call Peter. Let's get Peter, and because he's a great problem solver, decision maker. And it's been a nice outside perspective from our leadership team. We get so immersed that it's nice to be able to ask Peter things when he's not here every day, or typically hasn't been here all the time, to give us an outside perspective and to come in with a different lens, especially for me, a less emotional lens. That won't surprise you, Howie. But to give me a less emotional one, which, there's times where I'm like, Peter, you're not here every day. I'm like, okay, wait, yes, that's why I asked you what your opinion was. So yeah, it's he's here and he's not all at the same time. But it used to be where he would leave for the day to his job in a suit and walk by all of us in our camp attire, and then he would come back and having to smell all of us camp professionals that had been here all day outside running around. So it was very, very different. But I would say, yeah, this year and a half looks a little bit different, but otherwise that's how it works for us.
Yeah, no, I find it very interesting because I'm sure there are people listening. Sari and I have had sort of this morphing into this role, and I'm sure there are a lot of people out there who either are partners or spouses that both come from a corporate background and want to get into camp, or maybe one partner has a corporate background. And I'm assuming, Peter, I can describe what you do is a little more corporate in the sense that in terms of family business and structure and things of that kind. And I find it really interesting, the role, seeing it from the lens of your other life too, is kind of must be, I'm sure it's incredibly valuable, especially during this last 18 months when, for many of us in the business, had to look at our businesses as businesses rather than this more holistic thing. And I know I've spoken on previous shows where, Sari and I, in terms of our training, it took a lot of digging into topics and processes and symptoms from a corporate lens that we never really had to do, because as we all know, in the camp industry, you get in this cycle and you just operate your business of closing and finishing the books and opening registration and raising your fees a little bit and blah, blah, blah. So I find it really interesting when, Peter can be brought in to maybe see it from that lens. I know that we naturally, Sari and I, don't see it, have had to learn how to see it from that lens. Have you found there have been real moments post-purchasing camp where, Peter, you got to bring in that lens either in your own discussions or with the team or anything like that?
Yeah, I think my responsibilities and just sort of say the macro finances of camp, both our personal portion of it and the actual camp operations. I have a lot of experience we're a consulting company. That's what I do in my day-to-day business. So hourly rates function very similar to a lawyer. And we're always looking at rates and adjusting rates and raising prices and, or adjusting them based on, market influences and other things. So that, and along with, a pandemic that's squarely focused on healthcare, which is what my other job is. I have a large professional team that are very versed in infection control. So there was a lot of things that I would guess that probably made a lot of camp owners over the past couple of years very nervous and wary. And that's my day-to-day life. So bringing it here and, what we needed to do. And at least for me, I had a lot of value to bring. And then it wasn't maybe as taxing or as stressful as it may have been if I didn't have that experience. And the same thing with legal issues or HR. We have, we're a mid-sized company, so we're not a small company. So we have relatively speaking, a fair amount of resources. So if we run into something here, I have a professional at work that I can call and say, hiring practices, firing practices, any of those legal kind of things. We have a resource for that. So that's been really good for a small business to have those. Otherwise, small businesses even know in the US about PPP loans and other things, So.
Well, that's always sort of, given what we do, we try to find the right line between being very campy, so to speak, when we approach certain topics, but also recognizing that there is I think the worst thing a camp director wants to be described as is having their program be too corporate. Like, that's not what they want. And finding the healthy balance between doing all the right things that you have to do and still keeping the essence of and the spirit of what we do as camp professionals. And to have, obviously to have someone, so tied in your circumstance, is really, super beneficial. And yeah, I can see how you guys can bring both of your worlds together to sort of navigate all the stuff we've been doing. We for Sari and I, and Sari can speak to this, at the beginning of the pandemic, we put our son through business school so he could help us, basically. So
we were a bit of a homegrown reaching out to our social connections. So our son and our daughter really jumped into play to be able to help us out with a lot of that consulting. And then also the networking that we do and the connections we do with our families has helped a lot too. So if we needed some insight and stuff, we were able to reach out to close friends and families, but also the families that have been loyal to us to give us some insight as well.
Yeah. So Kelly, what the $1 million question that people are asking, like, they're just saying, like, how do you make it work? Like, you're with each other like all the time. Like, how do you do this? And do you have any is there a secret sauce? Is there a magic? Is that what do you think?
The thing I would just say is you have to like that person. I mean, like, really, I mean, like, if you're going to do this as a partnership, the things in your relationship, I mean, if you're looking to go into it, your relationship has to be good long before you jump into it, because, I mean, in 6 years, there's stressful things. And some of those are the things especially for us, I think you talked about, of like, really campy, and I'm half campy and half not campy, and bringing some of those things in cause stress and don't fit, and others are necessary even though they don't feel right. And it's a stressful job too. I mean, it's fantastic and great, but like any job, there's some stressful times. And when you have to walk from your office into your house and look at each other and make dinner, you better like each other and know how to talk to each other and deal with it now, so that it doesn't, because you got to wake up tomorrow and do it all over again for the kids, so
yeah. we say all the time, like, something better not happen to one of us, because who would ever want to step into this situation? Like, 3 kids own a summer camp. Like, there was a very small subset of people that would love this the way we love it and love to do it together, but we joke all the time, like, Lord, we better live together. We better make it to a long time, because no one else is going to want to step into this. But yeah, I agree with that. You really got to like each other, because it is hard.
Yeah, Sari, I mean, even our kids' friends growing up, they would often come up to us, right, and say things like, my parents could never do what you guys do. Right?
Absolutely. I mean, I got to watch it growing up with my own parents, so I had a bit of a window that way. But definitely, but I do think, like, we also have our own interests too, and I think you have to really balance life off. So it's not all business. Although I do have to say, like, you wake up in the middle of the night and you look at each other, especially during the pandemic, and say, "Oh my gosh, do we think about this, or what about doing that?" And so as much as you try and put boundaries in place and you try and balance out your life with other things, you got to love what you do. And I think that has really, I think for both of us and for you guys as well, I can see it's more than just a business, right? It's something we all love to do, and you wake up loving it most mornings. And even when there are those stressful parts, it feels so good when you can get past those stressful parts in the business. And I think one of the biggest things I've learned through camp, and I think Howie pushes me, is to get outside my comfort zone. Like, I am not as much of an extrovert, as though people will often say, like, but you're in camp. And I'm like, I know, but I'm really not an extrovert. But Howie and our team will push us and to get out there and do the best that you can be. So I don't know, that's part of our relationship that I think has made me grow over the years too.
Yeah. And in many ways, camp is, as much as you don't want to admit it, you got to own the reality of your lifestyle that you've chosen, right? It is 24/7 in so many ways. There isn't a day that you don't talk about the business. And as our kids have grown up, and I'm sure the same with you, is trying to find those boundaries when, your kids aren't necessarily hearing mom and dad talk about camp again and stuff like that. We've had to navigate that. Our kids are adults now, but there have been moments where you try to, it's easy to morph into conversations about camp when you're not at camp or during the off season. And I think it's a bit of a learning curve, knowing how to pick your spots. And we've tried to be very conscious, especially when the kids were young, like, here they go again, they're talking about camp again, or like we've tried really hard. And let's be honest, like, this lifestyle that we all have as partners in business and in life, I mean, the cycle of camp does afford us to develop, what we believe to be, I know I can speak for Sari, like, such incredibly important relationships with our kids in terms of, I've prided myself on coaching my boys who have an interest in the sport that I love and things like that. And we do things, with our daughter, like, it just, doing it together has been, incredibly rewarding. So, my plug for, if you can do this, and I do agree with Peter, if you like each other enough to do this, then, I think there's a real reward at the end. And for us, it's been seeing our kids grow up. And then, another topic we could explore too is, even having our kids grow up at the camps we own, and what that means for them socially and all those things, because those are considerations. Do you want your kids growing up in an environment where their parents are seen as the bosses, and the stigma that our kids sometimes have to deal with that reality? And I know Sari can speak to that because, and I don't want to steal her thunder, but she worked hard.
You almost had to work harder to be able to prove yourself, because you never wanted anybody to think, oh, you got it because your parents are the owners. And so I think our kids have done a really good job of trying to be under the radar, especially like at our overnight camp with that. But at the day camp, I know Jordana, there was a time when she felt that same pressure. And then you get to a point where it's like, I've made it, I've proven myself, and I am good to go. But it definitely can be that additional stressor. Yeah.
Having them in the home. I think, like, there's no, like you said, how do you make it work? I don't think there's any perfect situation. Like, I think about, there's times, most of the time, where I'm like, oh, I wish Peter was here every day. I'm at the camp he grew up with. So there's many times where I wish he was here all the time and we're doing it together. But I also, like Peter had said, those resources and being able to have that outside perspective is so valuable, especially the past year and a half. He was saying, Kelly, we're going to be a mask. I'm like, no way, Peter. He's like, oh yeah, you're going to be wearing masks all the time. I'm like, no, so, I mean, he was like the crystal ball of what was coming. So it's very interesting, but that boundary is hard. And I think the past year and a half, that boundary has been extra challenging, especially with kids. Our kids are all in the home. And so it's always difficult, the conversations I want to have while we're making dinner. And then, are they listening? Are they not? Like, not saying names of staff, or you just want, because he comes home and I want to talk. Shocker. But also having the kids at home the past year and a half was really hard. And it was really hard, especially for me to not let that emotion show, and being able to separate the two, especially when you're home and your office are right there. So that boundary piece was definitely tested, I would say. So, but we wanted to talk a little bit about leading into how summer was for each of us. So do you want to, the two of you, quickly, this could be another hour episode. But I've talked to Howie, but Sari, how was the summer for you? Howie told me that on the last, when we were talking, that he's never, he doesn't think you've ever had to work. You worked the hardest you ever did this summer.
I mean, it definitely was the most intense summer ever. But I was just saying to Howie, and I've said it a few times in the last couple of months, that upon reflection, I honestly, last summer is somewhere in my brain locked away somewhere. Like, I just don't want to unpack it. And it's almost an unconscious thing, but I do not, unless I really have to, I don't want to pull it out. I don't want to think about it. I am grateful to the team we had, to our family, to our friends that supported us through this, and the amazing team that we could really depend on as we went through the summer. And definitely as a camp director, we're always prepared that crazy things are going to happen. And crazy things definitely happened. And yes, you can plan ahead for some, but you can never always be fully prepared. And that was like any typical summer, but on steroids. But it's definitely packed away, and I'm just focusing on moving forward and grateful that we are moving forward. How we actually, do you want to tell them what you've heard people refer that to? Like childbirth, like, it was, right? And then you just forget about that and look at all the great experiences you have moving forward. That was last summer.
And you have other kids, and you like, I was trying to, like Sarah and I were talking, I said, I heard someone refer to like that. And she said, oh yeah, like, it's really interesting.
Yeah. Bob Ditter just did a webinar, and it was about taking care of yourself as a camp director, and they called it campnesia. So I think it's okay to have campnesia for this past summer. So
yeah, that is awesome. I never heard that. I think that's brilliant. That says it all. I think. It does. Yeah, for sure. And,
yes, it does.
And I think you're right. We could spend a lot of time. Sari and I were privileged to be in a position to work with the greater camp community in Ontario, up here in Canada, to give our time and our efforts to help with great people to get us to where we were to start the summer. And that again is something that's been important in our lives as camp professionals too. But I was just going to add, Kelly and Peter, that where Peter has, and this may be true what I'm about to say for the two of you, but I know for Sari and I, we're in it daily in the office with our people every day. We sometimes, as partners in this business, and again, I say this to everybody, and I can only speak for ourselves, is like, they see us at our best times and some of our worst times, meaning our full-time people, right? When you do this together, you'd like to think, they see our relationship play out in real time when we're most stressed, when we're our happiest, when we're not seeing eye to eye. And, that takes some navigating. And, I think that to do this as partners, whether it's in a pandemic or not, you've got to be okay in your skin and I think this is true as a camp director in general, but you can't put on a show all the time. People who are closest to you in your operation are going to see this partnership as real as it can be. And Sari and I think part of our success, I think, is we've owned that too. There are lots of jokes about our closest of the closest colleagues looking at our kids and saying, well, yeah, mom and dad had a really tough day. Like it was just one of those. And I don't know if other people who are in this can relate to that, but Sari and I try to be as real as possible. So, our offices at camp are divided by a wall, and sometimes they'll hear us, doing our thing between the wall, and, oh, we're not going to go and talk to Howie and Sari right now. They're having a moment or whatever. But that's part of, like, we have found the sort of the joys and realities of the lifestyle we have and working together. So that's something that, I think when you're thinking about doing this or have been in it for a while, I hope you can relate to that. I just feel that's been a part of our working and personal relationship over the years as well.
Well, I think you speak to, I hear what I'm thinking about is that team around you. And yeah, they see, like in the summer, I think for sure we do not a role reversal, but the weight goes more on Peter for sure, of our family life. And so, he orders the HelloFresh and he knows the kids' schedules. And he's like, Kelly, we are leaving for baseball, or we're leaving for lacrosse. Are you coming or not? So, and then when typically in the normal world, when he's traveling, I'm taking more of that heavy load. So we definitely share that, but it's a different times of year. So it works for us. But I definitely notice also that leadership team around us. They see the good and the bad, and they also are so important for our family, especially this summer. One of my kids said to Miss Chris, who works for me, mom was really crying a lot yesterday, and she's like, yeah, because this summer I'd be weeping doing the dishes. Like I couldn't even hold it in doing that. I was just like standing at the sink weeping. And they're like, are you okay? I'm like, Yeah, I'm okay. Like it makes me weepy now, but I think they know what that's like. So then they can support our family too, which is incredible. Like they knew how hard it was. So we're supporting them, but they really are that support for our family and the two of us and our kids. So as much as there is that hard and they see the best and the worst, they also are like this family you choose, like these extra aunts and uncles and people for our kids that when you talk about the gifts of this and that time with our children is huge and being able to see them. But I think one of the biggest gifts is that community for our family. Like, I mean, Lord, when you have a wedding coming up, how do you even cut down that guest list of people that are important to you? Like half of them, like I have family and I have camp and I have my friends. Like it's a second family to us, and they were vital and they are vital, I think, in how we did that. But I don't know, Peter, it was interesting to hear your perspective, Sari, on summer. I'm curious. This is like the couples therapy. How would you describe summer for you, Peter? Or when you have to sum it up, do you have campnesia, or what's your perspective? You're good at this part, the reflection.
Well, like I said, for me, it was it's odd because personally it was fantastic because I got to be a lot more involved. I used some of the skills that I'm feel very good at and, brought them to camp to make things better. So, but you, at the same point in time, we talk about with our kids, like your mood and how that can affect like all of us that live together. And not that you don't have the right to that, but sort of, how you interact with people, despite no matter what your mood is, you have to be cognizant of that. And I think we saw that more this summer from Kelly, because it was just, camp wasn't as fun as it was in years past. It's 1 year, it's a good year to have some campnesia for. Doesn't mean there wasn't great experiences and fun, and looking back on it, just like a kid, like those edges get softened and you only remember the good things mostly. So it was sort of a mixed bag for me. It was, being a supportive spouse was not hard, but like I want her to be happy and enjoying it, and that's hard to see. Especially with something that I love, right? Like like, how is that possible? But then spending time like, oh geez, I know how that's possible. Like it's sort of like that. We listened to a podcast and they're just talking about this paradox, right, of like how things can be two things can be completely right. And I think this camp season was another good example of that. Like it was completely successful and fantastic, and sometimes terrible at the exact same time.
Yes,
like
agreed.
Absolutely.
How do I deal with that?
Mm-hmm. I think there was this hypersensitivity, is I think the word of the summer, when I reflect back on it, is that everybody was just so hypersensitive. So you could have had a camp-wide special day that was like amongst your mediocre kind of camp-wide special day, but to everybody, it was amazing. It was out of this world because we were so secluded before and then brought into, so I think there was that hypersensitivity to everything, but it would go on the other side of it too. When you talked about relationships and how people were dealing with things, you had the negative side. So it definitely was this up and down all at the same time, or you thought you had everything totally worked out. And that first day we talked about, the summer was the summer of, oh shit. Like we would look at each other and your eyes would well up and you're like, I thought we had this covered, but how are we going to actually survive today? And then the next day we definitely went back to the drawing board and we made it work. And you kind of, that was your amnesia, like that went out of your head and you just look forward from there.
Yeah. I'd say this to everybody, when they ask me how the summer was, which I'm sure we're all getting the same question, it was joy and stress in the exact same moment. We all walked around, you walk around your overnight camp, you walk around your day camp, and you're seeing kids being kids again. But at the same time, the other side of your brain is saying, okay, but we have all these public health protocols and we have to manage this and we have to manage that. So So I think that was as intensified as ever as professionals. And then this dynamic of doing it with your life partner and spouse, and just making, sure it all goes well is so critical. So I totally agree with the concept of the paradox for sure. It's a really good one.
Yes, it is. Well, we have so many other questions we want to get to, Howie, but we are getting close to our time of trying to be cognizant. So we might have to just save these for a next discussion. Maybe have to be an annual thing where we bring our spouses on. It'd be kind of fun.
Yeah, no, I think so too, because I think, this idea of, getting other guests who are in this same situation would be really good too. It'd be really great to hear how other people have been navigating it, or maybe even considering. I've often found, when it comes to ACA or OCA sessions at conferences, I've really enjoyed meeting other couples that are doing this too. And I've been in sessions where we can really just honestly talk about things. And I think that this is a very not surprising subset of camp professionals in our industry, spouses who do this work together. And it's kind of a networking group that, deserves a little more attention, because all of our circumstances are so different, and it would be interesting to find very niche topics in the future to explore for sure. But I have to say that, it's really been nice for the four of us to be on this, and we just want to give thanks. It was just the Canadian Thanksgiving up here in Canada, so we've spent a lot of time being grateful for the opportunity to get together with family and friends, and doing it safely and continuing to be on hopefully this trajectory of some more normalcy in our lives. But we also want to thank our sponsors, and the next sponsor that we definitely want to thank on the show is Camp Brain. They've been with us since the beginning, and Camp Brain is camp management software, which serves over 1,300 plus camps across the world, and they've been doing it since 1994 with an incredible team of 45 plus dedicated staff to meet your every need. In fact, here's what Tom Horner says. Tom is the owner of Catalina Island Camps, and this is what he says on his experience with Camp Brain. Camp Brain is a great product for camps looking for flexibility in managing their summer camp registration, staff hiring, and conference center outdoor education bookings. It's powerful and a complete tool for our programs. And thanks to Tom for that quote, but also I couldn't agree more. As a longtime Camp Brain user, it is full service, and it's great to see that people are feeling the same way about Camp Brain. We encourage you to check out Camp Brain at campbrain.com, or call them at 866-485-8885. And we, Kelly and I, continue to thank them for their continued support of the Camp Owners Podcast.
All right. So Howie and our spouses, we always like to end our show the same way, which is we want to end with something that's inspiring us right now. This can be a book, article, podcast, documentary, leadership quote, or anything else that inspires us to be better camp professionals. So we'll each give a chance to share, and we'll put it in the show notes, but people share. I would say the thing that's inspiring me most is I have, like Sari, it's back there at the Campnesia of the summer. And I honestly haven't really wanted to even go there until I'd say the past 2 weeks. I've been able to really think, okay, let's go again. And so I listened, like I had said, to that Bob Ditter podcast, and he was talking about this summer, how camp professionals just were really those frontline workers. And that to me felt really inspiring. Like, yes, we were frontline workers for children this summer, and gave lots of meaning, even though it was hard to this summer. So I really liked hearing that, and giving some, not justification, but some of that, like, it's okay how you felt the past month to just not be able to go there, to think about it. And the recovery that it required, I really felt like I needed a month to recover from camp, and I'm not just now coming out of that. So I really like that podcast. If others haven't listened to it from ACA, the Bob Ditter the podcast or camp professionals about mental health. So I will put that resource and link in mine. But that would be my inspiration. Howie, what about you?
Well, I go back to my tried and true. Season 2 of Ted Lasso just ended. It continues to be an incredible television watching inspirational journey for me personally. And a quote out of the last episode just came up that I really connected with. The quote is, "A good mentor hopes you'll move on. A great mentor knows you will." And I think of in my own personal life of people who have been a mentor to me, but I also feel at this stage in my life and in my profession, how I see the young people that I work with a very different lens around mentorship and skill building and confidence boosting, and how the best compliment as a mentor you can have is when they get the opportunities to blossom, not only within your organization, but quite frankly, outside of your organization. And it's a good feeling. And I know Sari and I were watching that episode at the same time, and we sort of looked at each other when that was said, and it was like, oh, that's about as true a statement as I can remember, and for sure I can identify with it. So we'll put it in, and yes, Ted Lasso. It's a place for so much goodness.
It's the best. It's the best. Okay, Peter, I did not prepare you, so I will just fully disclose that. I did not prepare you for this, but having warned you at the beginning of the episode, do you have something that would share?
I will.
Okay.
So I think one of the things that I've been recognizing in my other professional life, and I think it's applicable here too, is we've spent a lot of time just getting through today, right? And then what can I do tomorrow? Our organization has had small mini strategic plannings because it just doesn't feel humanly possible to think much farther in advance. So I have a simple little book. It's called 5, Where Will You Be in 5 Years? Little tiny book, quick read, just sort of gets you in that point of reference, thinking towards the future, thinking about where you want to be. I think after the last couple of years, a lot of people have been shaken a little bit to saying, maybe I do want to start my own camp or whatever you want to do out there. So a good little primer to be able to do that, I think, on topic with today's discussion. So.
All right. Okay. Sari, what about you?
And I guess mine's been, as we start preparing for next year and registrations are rolling in and lots of families are asking great questions and giving some feedback about last summer. And we go back to that hypersensitivity and campers and staff really socially not having the time to practice their social skills. We did see, I think amongst all our camps, some behaviors and some interactions that just were not typical of other years. And so I have been going back to remind families about 2 of my favorite resources. And one is from Rick Lavoie. It's called Fat City. And it's a video where you actually get to do different types of activities and feel what it's like to have a learning disability or an attention issue, and just helping to build tolerance amongst people. So that's one. And then socialthinking.com is a great website that has some amazing books written for kids and teenagers about just how to really work together and get back into that social realm of because I think we were in a social deficit for so long, and just getting back to it. So those are 2 of my resources that I'll send your way.
Amazing. Thanks for all those things. That's a great cross section of really good stuff on this show for sure. If people want to get a hold of us, I'm going to ask everybody to sort of share how we can connect. For myself, it's howie@camprobinhood.ca. You can find me at Howie Grossinger on Instagram. Peter, how people can get to you on topics related to camp, or perhaps even in your other professional life? What's the best way to get a hold of you?
That's a good question. I can share my email address. It's, reflects my age well. So it's Peter Shuna, one big word, at hotmail.com. It's a good place to send me.
Hotmail. We love the 90s.
I told some guy the other day, it just reflects my age now. I'm going to change it to iCloud or something. So,
you would have been older if you had an AOL.com.
Yeah, no, that's my father. So I can't quite go back that far, but
Sari?
And mine is Sari@camprobinhood.ca, just like House.
And
I don't know what my
Kelly?
Instagram one is.
And mine is Kelly with a Y at hiddenpinesranch.com. Peter, we'll have to get you an email and then we can just send all the disgruntled parents your way. That'd be great.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad this is recorded for posterity. So this has been really special. I know there was a little bit of arm twisting, not too much. You guys are awesome. And thank you so much for the insight and such a great discussion. So many great offshoots can happen in the future for this. We are really, really thankful that you joined us today. Listeners, please don't forget that you can find all of our show notes at gocamp.pro/ownerspod. You can find the resources that we mentioned in this episode and lots of good stuff there from our show and other Go Camp Pro podcasts out there. There's such an incredible library. Check it out. We really hope you got something out of this discussion. We really appreciate you listening, and we can't wait to see you next time and share with you some really great future guests as well on the Camp Owners Podcast. Take care, everybody.